words are talking about something which underlies this diversity, which underlies this multiplicity. And that is the self. And the self is not that I have a self and you have a self and somebody else has a self. That self, differences of self, I, you, and he and she, and millions of he and she, that's not the self we are speaking of. That's the ego, as the introduction by Arzuji, that it's a false self, it's ego self. But people think the ego self is the real self. Ego self is what really suffers. It seems to become delighted when it gets certain thing and suffers when it loses something. So the idea or the quest for self is invariably connected with the idea of what is happiness. Because it is I who becomes happy or unhappy. So what is this I? Why does it become happy or unhappy? And not only that, along with the quest for self and the quest for happiness, there's also the quest for eternity. Quest for जैसे हिंदी में कहते हैं अमरत्व, कितनी देर मैं जीऊंगा और मैं पहले कहाँ था और आगे कहाँ जाऊंगा. गीता में there is a श्लोक, it says अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि व्यक्त मध्यस्थ भारत अव्यक्त निधनान्येव तत्र का परिवेदना. Which means before you come into being, before we are born, we know how we are born, but where were we before that? And we know we all are going to die one day. Any little experience around us, little common sense shows that. You don't have to look even at human beings dying. Even other beings are also dying, whether it is a dog or an elephant, or it is a quadruped, or it is a bird, or even a flower. Flower is born and it dies. So also, we also are born and we die. So where were we before and where we will go? This quest is also very much related to the quest of self. So what is self? Who am I? So there are, this question has been very well investigated into by the Upanishads. So I'm not going into a talk on the Upanishads. I'm just going to spend some time with you talking about what could be the self. What could be the self? Hanumanji, who was once asked by Rama. Now, this is what is quoted by Sri Ramakrishna, the great guru or teacher of Swami Vivekananda. And Swami Vivekananda also, during one of his talks, rephrases it and puts it also. So Ramji asks Hanuman, how do you look at me? In this question lies the answer to what we are seeking. So the question is that, what do you think of me? It's not that do you think of me as powerful or do you think me inferior or superior? Rather, how do you look upon me? So Hanumanji gives a wonderful philosophical answer. He says, Ramji, when I look upon myself as body, then I look upon you as master and myself as a slave or a servant. Which means if I have this body, so I am full of division from you, and you are a super powerful person. So we are different. You have much more power than me. So you are my master, and I am your servant or somebody who likes to follow you. This is what is called traditionally as Dvaita. Dvaita is two. Vyavahar kale tu Dvaitam cha. In the ordinary common word, we all kind of experience Dvaita. Then comes another stage where we are not just experiencing ourselves as separate. So Hanumanji said, I am separate and you are separate, but you are very powerful. So you are the master and I am the servant. The second answer he gives is, when I think of myself as mind, first is as body. Now first, when I think of myself as mind, I am part of you. So I have now come nearer to Rama. First I am separate, now I am part of you, which means there's a larger something and I am part of that. This is called traditionally in the Sanskrit tradition as Vashishta Advaita. It's a kind of Advaita, but Vashishta, specialized with Advaita. Vashishta Advaita. So it's like there's a huge circle, in that there is a dot, and I am that dot. So is that dot different from the circle? No, it is part of the circle, but yet it is a dot, which means I am part of God, but I am still kind of different in some way. So I am a sacred part. In the Ramcharitmanas also, this is mentioned in one particular way. It says, Jeev Avinashi. Jeev is Avinashi, and he is but part of the eternal. Now, third answer is what we are actually discussing. When Hanumanji is asked, how do you look upon me? He tells Rama, when I look upon myself as the self, there's no difference between you and me. So that's a very profound answer. So there's no difference between you and me when I think myself as self, which means as spirit, as chaitanyam, as consciousness. Now, consciousness, let's make it very clear, is not a medical term. I'm not speaking of, oh, I'm conscious and you're unconscious. No, not that way. Consciousness is a spiritual term here in particular context. So what's the spiritual context here? It says that there is an all-pervasive, sarvatra, something is there. Now, if you want to name it, the scientist will name it as material. There is all-pervasive matter is there. But a spiritual person who has got perception, spiritual perception, he says, no, this all-pervasive thing is not matter. It is rather the consciousness. That's the only difference. Swami Vivekananda, in his famous inspired talks, it's in the 7th volume of Complete Works, he mentions this, the difference between science and spirituality in this particular context. So he says that what science calls as matter, which means all-pervasiveness, spiritual or Advaita calls it as consciousness. There's a small difference, however. Matter kind of, it is existing everywhere, but it's not enlightened, whereas consciousness is full of light. So the Sanskrit word for all pervasiveness and full of knowledge and full of joy is a beautiful word. You must know this. You must have heard it. It's called Sat Chit Ananda. Satchidananda. So Sat Chit Ananda. So Sat means existence, life. It is existing. So how do you actually translate Sat into English? Those of you know this. You have taste for the English literature. You will know this. The word is, is hai. Now you add ness to that. Is-ness. Hai. Vartaman hai. It is all present. Sabhi or oh hai. It's called easiness. That easiness is called Sat, consciousness. And easiness never goes. But easiness assumes different forms. It assumes different forms. So today the easiness is in the form of a particular person. The tomorrow easiness dies. So the easiness is cremated or buried. But does the easiness die? Does it disappear? Does it get destroyed? He says no. It is actually being, it's just changing forms. It's coming in a new form now. So isness is Sat and Chit is consciousness or pure eternal knowledge. And third is Ananda. Ananda is bliss. So I will make a small difference between bliss and pleasure. So the pleasure is something which you get when you attain something. When we, let's say, when we win a trophy, we get a gold medal, we get a high package when we are working in a college and we're studying in a college and we get a work offer. Oh, I got some 10 lakhs rupees as a, so we feel very, very happy. that happiness is what's called sukha. And this sukha is always produced by coming together of certain factors. And so there's a thing called you, and there's a thing called your job, and a thing called your capacity to work. You're a normal, healthy person. A thing called that the company into which you're employed or going to get employed, they can afford to give you money, and etc. etc. So this all put together will make you happy. Otherwise, no. Simple 10 lakhs will not make you happy. So this is called sukha or pleasure. And if you are thinking of bliss, bliss is unconditioned happiness. You know, sometimes we all have experienced this. As children, for instance, when we see the sunrise, there's no ego involved there. It's not that you have been made famous, or you got a lot of Facebook likes, or you got a lot of people coming and saying, "Oh, Swami," or "Oh, person," or "My friend," or "My oh, sir, you are a good speaker," or you look beautiful, or you're very learned, or XYZ, hundred of things to describe you. No, it's not like that. It is a pure sense of joy as a child has. So that's called Ananda. So it is said saints are as simple as children. Why? Because they have learned that sukha and dukkha, pleasure and happiness, are the changing facets of life. But bliss is within me. It is. So this is what is we call as self. There is a changing self and there is an unchanging self. So the changing self is, we all know we have changed so much. You look back, you're in college now. So look back into, say, if you are in first year, I presume some of you are in first year. So you go back and look when you are in 8th standard. So 8th or 9th standard, think of it. How much you have grown physically. There are a lot of changes that have happened. Similarly, mentally, you have undergone change. So is the change now complete? No more change is going to happen, and nobody will know that. Nobody will say that no more change is going to happen. We all know we are going to age. Now, if you are 20, 22, now you will be soon. You will not know how soon you will be 30 and 35. And then we do not know how suddenly you become 50 and 60. And you are now then at the age of 70, you are a grandfather and etc. There's constant change. So the Hindi word, Sanskrit word for word is samsar. Yeah, Jagat. What is samsar? That is the changing self. So what is the samsar? Samsarate iti samsaraha. जो हमेशा सरते चल रहे हैं, which is always moving, is called samsara, changing. Nothing is permanent, nothing is going to remain, so it's always changing. Suppose you make a very strong building and people say, it's a permanent building. Yeah, it's permanent for 40 years, permanent for 400 years. Then it has to age. The factor called aging is happening on the building. Everything in this world is constantly changing. Now, if you say everything is changing, then does it mean there is nothing called which never changes? That's the point. I think we must keep it very much in mind, because that differentiates us from some of the Buddhist philosophies. So Buddhists say everything is changing, whereas the Advaita says, yes, everything is changing, but there is an underlying, unchanging ground of this reality. It's just like you've got a stage, you've got a dais on which a cultural program is being held. So now you have got, let's say, a speaker or an anchor who's introducing the subject. Then comes a singer, and then comes a dancer, and then comes, let's say, somebody who presents a cultural event, a drama. Everything is happening on where? It's happening on the stage. And the stage is constant. So that constancy in us, that sense of being in us, is the real self. Now, this is okay. This is a nice philosophy, some of you might say. Though those who have studied and experienced it, they say it's not just philosophy, it's an experience. In one of the Upanishads, it's called Shweta Ashvatara Upanishad. There is a wonderful declaration by the Rishi. So the Rishi are the people, Rishi is not necessarily who has got a beard. No, beard and Rishi has got nothing, to say yes, they go together. One can be a normal human being, but can be a Rishi. And the Rishi means he is full of insights into spiritual life. He has experienced the spiritual reality. Rishyate, drishyate, iti rishihi. That's the Sanskrit definition. One who sees the subtle reality, the transcendental reality, has experienced that truth is called Rishi. So there's one of the Rishis, he says, so I'll quote the Sanskrit and then I'll translate that. And this was quoted by Swami Vivekananda when he went to the Chicago Parliament of Religions. He gave the speech there, which was very well received. In fact, it shook some of the people because they always thought that they were sinners and they were bad, and somehow some God has to save them. Whereas Swamiji brought this Advaita idea to them. And after hearing, some of them were really shaken. They said, how can it be so that I'm not a sinner? So what did Swamiji say? He quoted this verse in English, but I'll quote the original, then I'll translate it to English. The verse is, Shunvantu Vishve Amritasya Putraha Aye Dhamani Vishwani Tastuhu Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam Adityavarna Tamasah Parastat Tameva Veditvati Mrityumeti Nanya Pantha Vidyate Ayanaya. It says, look you, all the children of immortality. Shunvantu Vishve Amritasya Putra. So what a sweet name it is, to call each other as eternal. Amritasya Putra. You are not sinners, you are not bad. You make mistakes, everyone does. But mistakes is not our real self. Just as if I look at the sun, sun is visible, but so there's some problem with my eye. Suppose I have got some problem with my vision and I'm not able to see the sun clearly. So is some defect with the sun then or with me? So it's with me. Likewise, it's with me that I forget my real self and I make mistakes. But real me is never suffering. The real me never has got any any depression. Some people suffer from depression. Some people suffer from negative thinking. No, my real me has got none of these. I am the pure one. Shunvantu Vishve Amritasya Putra. Aye Dhamani Vishwani Tastuhu. Those who live in the other regions, not only on earth, below the earth also, or some other divine loka also. Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam. The Rishi is declaring that Vedaham, I know. Veda means to know. Vedaham Purusham Mahantam. I know that being. Purusham means being. Mahantam, the great one. I know that great one, great being. What does he say? He says that which is beyond all darkness. Darkness means ignorance. Darkness means death, fear. Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam Adityavarna Tamasah Parastat. It is without beyond all tamas. It is full of light. It is pure consciousness. And he says, Tameva Viditva Atimrityumeti. You will be going beyond the mrityu or fear or death once you know yourself. It doesn't mean that you become immortal in terms of your body. Body dies, but it doesn't cause you any suffering, because you exist. So the fear of death, the fear of non-existence, the fear of suffering as the final goal, no, it all goes away. And he says that is the only way to seek eternal happiness. So the subject that we are discussing is how do we travel from a selfish living to an unselfish living. So when we are selfish, which means we think these sensory happiness that we have and all the me that we keep doing and all that money that we earn, we think that's the only goal of life. And that makes our life miserable. You know how miserable a person becomes when he has no concern for others, when he is so self-centered. And Advaita takes you away from that and says, come on, realize your real self. You are not that limited thing. So a person is very nice, very rich and very successful and very powerful, has big connections, owns a lot of Mercedes, if you might say so, and he has a lot of bank balance and big position. All this is called in Sanskrit as the path of success. It is just a sapalta. It is a kind of worldliness. And then one fine day, suddenly, oh, I have got cancer. Now I have to die one day. Or somebody dies accidentally. Or he loses his beauty of this face. So he has to rush to the beauty parlor to make himself look beautiful. Well. Try to see your real self. This is the changing self. Let us discover the unchanging self. Once you discover the unchanging self, then begins your journey from lower to the higher self. So how do we first of all discover this higher self? We begin with the study of Shastras. We read the scriptures. We analyze our different states of being. No, the states of being. We are now listening. This is a state of being. So we are awake, and then we might fall asleep. Some of you might fall asleep listening. So then you dream something. Then you dream of, let's say, something which you ate. Maybe you dream of pizza, or maybe you dream of going to a place, or some unconnected ideas come. So that's also a state of being. And then there's another state of being where there is no dreaming. There's only easiness, which is deep sleep. So whether you are Jagrat, whether you are awake, whether it's Sushupti or Swapna, whether you have the deep sleep or the dream sleep, you are present in all these three. So who are you? Who are you who is present in the waking stage? You are present in the dream stage, and you are also present in the deep sleep stage. If you are not present in the deep sleep stage, you would have not said this, which you say when you get up and you say, ah, what a wonderful sleep I had. So deep it was. So refreshing it is. So that comes only when you are present. So what is that I which is present in all these three? This is the question. The answer to this question will be the answer to what we are discussing. That let us find out what is that deep thing in us. He says that the fourth one, it is called in the one of the Upanishads and the Mandukya Upanishad, that the fourth one is Chaitanyam Chaturtham Manyante. That is the fourth one. Actually, it's not the fourth one. It is the one on which there are three stages. It's like the stage, the dais in a hall, in an auditorium, and you have got three things happening over that. There is the waking stage, and the deep sleep, and the dream sleep. So once you know that myness will go, the self-centeredness will go, so then you begin to say, oh, why I was so selfish. So Swami Vivekananda made this statement. He took it from another angle. He said, see, those who think that they are going to just lead their life in a very self-centered way, they're very miserable. They may be happy for some time, but as they find that the real happiness lies only when you make others happy. And it is, discovering higher levels of our being. So this is a very important journey that happens from the lower being to the higher being. So the lower being is also true, but it's temporarily true. As you grow, as you rise up. So there's a story of a saint. It's a very interesting story, and I'll close in another few minutes. The story is one of them I wanted to tell you. The story is this: and there was a person who was a very needy person, and he didn't have money. So he went to a saint who was somewhere in the Ganga's bank, and he was to live in a small hut. This man had heard he's a very saintly man, so he went to him and expressed all his misery and pain, and said, I have this problem, and I have this issue. So what is the issue? The issue is he didn't have money. He wanted money. So the saint heard him whole thing and then said, look, there is one stone is there, you take it. Chale jao, isko leke chale jao. Where you touch it with any metal, it will become gold. So your problem will be solved. You'll have plenty of gold, you have plenty of money. Go. This man went and got it and checked it. Oh, it was so. He was so elated. He took that stone and went away. But after he went home, it struck him. Hey, how did this Sadhu Baba simply give away a stone like that, which could have made him so help? So next 2 days he returned. Now what's the matter? Sadhu Baba asked him. He said, well, I want to check what is it that you have which makes you give away that stone so easily as you did for me. Of course, the Sadhu Baba smiles and says, oh, that's the inner treasure that we all have. That's the Atman. There is a divinity present in all of us. So we must learn this lesson that from selfishness to unselfish living is but something which is common. Swami Vivekananda in his Karma Yoga lecture says, see, we all come with when we are born, with our clutches, our hands are clutched. We want to hold something. All children, their hands are like, they come with something. And when they go, it's all like this. It's open. So there's a message in this. Swamiji says that we all come to clutch that I will get happiness by getting more and more, by becoming more selfish, more self-centered, me, mine. And then, which means I follow the path of greed and the path of accumulation so much. And then the nature teaches me one day to learn to give. And the more I give, the more I begin to become free from worries, free to the kind of inner helplessness that I had. It's going away. So it's a journey, you see, from the very selfish living, where I am separate from you and you are separate from him. I don't see the oneness that is present in us. If I see oneness, then I try to help you. You see, we don't help each other because we think your line, your demarcation ends there and my demarcation begins here. So the spiritual oneness of man is what Advaita teaches. It also says that it doesn't mean that I become very impractical and say, oh, all money is mine and all my money is mine and all money is also mine. Not that way. There's misinterpretation of Advaita. So it says, yes, then practical word, we all have differences. We all have our limitations, our justifications. But we should not forget our divine oneness and try to bring that awareness that we are one with each other by way of bringing it through service. That I and you are one. Let me serve you. When I serve you, my heart becomes big. There was this lady who always suffered so many things in life and so many domestic issues she had. Then she approached a holy man and he said, okay, you want a solution. So he got her kind of, employed. Once in a week, she could go to a dispensary and because she was good in PRO work and public relations, so she could serve there. And she agreed and she went there. So he said, that's the solution for your problem. So don't ask me anything. Whatever problems you have, you just keep working. We will talk after some months. And she was a sincere lady, and every week she would come and serve there. So after some 6 months, when that holy man met her and asked her, how are you? He said, I have a wonderful time. So what about your problem? He said, which problem? Why? You had so many problems, your personal problems, domestic issues. Oh, Swamiji, what problems Here I am, I see people come with endless numbers of problems. Before that, my own problems have become so small, almost nil. Somebody has a terrible terminal disease, or somebody cannot afford money to cure, to seek a treatment. Somebody can seek treatment, can have money, but is not getting cured. Somebody wants everything, but he has everything, but at home, he has a hell of a time. Compared to all that, I'm so wonderful. So service kind of, opened up a new world for her. So this is how we should learn. And, there's a joy in giving. in the one of the Vedas it comes that happiness comes to him from whom happiness goes to others. So if happiness is going from us to others, which means we have learned to subdue our lower self and kind of express our higher self, then we really become happy. We are in a state of unhappiness because we are so much self-centered, lower self-centered. If you become higher self-centered, you're full of joy. So how do we do it? That is called the path of sadhana, path of doing spiritual practices. So I'm not going into details of that. Simple thing is try to just live a life of honesty, of purity, of self-reflection, of prayer. At the same time, carry on your duties in the world, whether you are a student or a teacher or somebody else, carry on your duties with due respect and due care. That's how we discover our higher self. Yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyaktva atma shuddhaye, says the Bhagavad Gita. Those who are seekers of the Atman, of the divinity within, of the self, the higher self, they work without getting attached to this world, which means they don't become very self-centered. They do work only for self-purification, Atma Shuddhaye, for their own self-purification. So thank you very much. This is what I wanted to share with you. Namaste.
If anyone have questions for Swamiji, kindly drop them in the chat box.
If anyone wants to write me a mail also, you can do so. You can get the email ID from the organizers. Can you read it out?
Sure. Anirudh is asking that given the prevalence of rituals and worship, even in contemporary times, how do you feel we can incorporate the principles of Advait while performing acts of worship?
So what was the first part of the question? There was a connectivity issue.
Given the prevalence of rituals and worship, even in contemporary times, yeah.
Okay. So rituals and whatever worships that we do, see, they are not in themselves very wrong. There's a trend among many modern people saying, "Oh, rituals are not good." But then rituals, how they are performed, with what spirit they are performed, that makes a difference. Certain things are not just rituals; they are simply some kind of practices which have come into being. You go to the real rituals; they're so wonderful. Swami Vivekananda says there are three aspects of religion. One is philosophy or spiritual experience and philosophy. Second is stories, the mythology, and third is ritual. So everyone has got some ritual or the other. So rituals will be there, worship, external worship will be there. We must not forget the spirit of that. Many times our rituals are only for the show, and we want to show to others. So that they really become a big problem then. And rituals should not be so much that they come in between you and your practice of the oneness with others. So rituals should be such that we should be able to feel nearer to our divine self. So that way rituals will be there. Rituals cannot be taken away from this world. In the contemporary world, we can practice this. You can practice Advaita by way of at least recognizing your oneness intellectually, and also by practicing certain amount of bhakti in your life. Certain amount of bhakti in the sense, of course, Advaita is the goal. So the bhakti in the sense, you try to feel that you are one with the God, as I refer to Hanumanji's story. So how do you feel? So the great Ramana Maharishi was asked once, so what is the difference between Dvaita and Advaita? He said Advaita is when you feel you are the self, and Dvaita is when you feel you are the body. And all of us, we feel we are bodies. So point is that in worshipping, in helping others, in that spirit also is of great help. So when you try to help others with the spirit of purification, yes, this work I will do for others because that makes me part of a larger whole. I'm part of a spiritual whole. So by serving others unselfishly, actually I'm serving myself only because I'm part of the whole. So I'm making myself purer. So that's how we can slowly incorporate these things in our day-to-day life. So one thing very important in incorporating this is to understand our mind. Try to understand where our mind is, what kind of samskaras are there in the mind. If the mind is very restless, we should try to make it pure by thinking pure thoughts, practicing pure thoughts. That will make the mind as very helpful instrument in understanding our divine nature, because divine nature in itself is beyond mind, but through purified mind it can be perceived. In the Upanishad it comes that it is beyond the mind, but it can be practiced by pure mind, it can be perceived. So how do we purify the mind? As I refer to, you do your work in a very unselfish way and try to bring in spiritual practices like prayer, like doing good to others. It's very important. Doing good to others, service, it's very important. And then there are other things like analysis, self-analysis. Find some time for yourself every day and analyze your life, analyze who you are. That kind of practice also helps. And above all, with all that, we must not forget, we should retain a few practices like always tell the truth. Truthfulness helps a lot. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the greatest austerity, sabse badi tapasya is jagat ki, is Kaliyug mein, is to tell truth, be truthful. So truthful is, as I know, I tell. Secondly, I keep my words, vachan raksha. So these, one is truthfulness, and second is respecting each other, having self-control. So these things should help us to incorporate Advaita in our day-to-day life.
Yuvraj is asking that what should be done if our inner conscience and scriptural knowledge contradict each other?
They cannot. Spiritual conscience, if you have conscience within, conscience is the voice within, and spiritual knowledge will not go against it. If it is going against, there's something wrong with your knowledge, because conscience will only help you to go on the right path. It's a special capacity in all of us. We know what is right and wrong, and we know what is truth. And spiritual knowledge will not tell untruth. So you should have an authentic spiritual knowledge. That's very important. So go to the authentic source. A lot of unauthentic, lot of half-baked truths are strewn around us. So we must be careful. I would suggest you take up the complete works of Swami Vivekananda in 9 volumes and go through them. You will have the most true spiritual, authentic spiritual knowledge. So if there is any question, one more we can take. Otherwise, we will wind up.
Swamiji, I have a question. Do we shape our own destiny, or does everything happen by fate?
Oh, this is a question of free will. So we have certain free will. That is, it's a huge subject. So to summarize it, we have free will, but that free will is like this. You have a cow and you tie a rope with that. So that much free will the cow has. But very often the cow does not use the whole of the rope. It's just sitting next to the peg and next to the small thing to which it is tied, and that much only it is utilizing it. Same way, we don't utilize our own energies fully. Once we start analyze, see, God has given a certain willpower. Let us use that. So once we use that, we shape our mind. So karma shapes our life, right type of karma. So whatever we are is a result of our past actions, and whatever we will be will be the result of present actions. So let us take care of our actions. That's important. So we do have a certain free will in that sense, but ultimately we find that we are part of a larger will also. And somebody has tied that cow somewhere. Somebody has tied that rope. Who is that somebody? So that's the larger thing. So at this point, I would say in our understanding of this issue, we should only restrict ourselves to say that, yes, we have to make our own destiny by our actions. At the same time, we must not become egoistic. We must acknowledge that we are an interdependent reality. It's not that we are so independent. We have others who are influencing, and we are influencing others also. So I will conclude it at that.
So I think we're done with the question answer round. So thank you so much, Swamiji, for addressing our queries and for guiding us today. I hope many of us got enlightened with your words, and our thirst for knowledge might got quenched to some extent. Thank you so much. Now it's time for a wonderful stuti by Anirudhji.
नमस्कार. तू बुद्धि दे, तू तेज दे, नव चेतना विश्वास दे, जे सत्य सुंदर सर्वथा, जे सत्य सुंदर सर्वथा, आजन्म ध्यान साध्यास दे. तू बुद्धि दे, तू तेज दे, नव चेतना विश्वास दे. हर वले आभाड़ ज्ञान से हो तयान सा सोबती, सापड़े ना वाट जाना हो तयान सा सारथी. साधना करती तुझी से, साधना करती तुझी से, नित्य तव सहवास दे. जे सत्य सुंदर दे, तू बुद्धि दे, तू तेज दे, नव चेतना विश्वास दे.
Thank you.
In an excellent manner. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Divyanshi. I'm extremely grateful to everyone for being a part of such an eye-opening session.